unreasonable. It's how you have to be if you want to change things. Relentless. Tenacious. The world's children need people like that. People who see impossible as incentive to try harder. Who find one good reason to keep going in the face of 1,000 reasons to stop. So, shout out to the hardcore, because big problems need big solutions from big game players. You know the type. The determined, the persistent, the unreasonable. UNICEF, in more than 190 countries and territories, we never give up until the rights of every child are protected. Are you with us? UNICEF, for every child.
Sorry, we were on mute. So hello and welcome to this fourth and last event of the year in the OneUN Diverse Talents series of career webinar events. Many thanks to United Nations volunteers for hosting this event, and also many thanks to the colleagues from over 20 United Nations agencies, funds and programs who came together to make this event happen. My name is Dora Csordas. I'm Recruitment Associate specializing in talent outreach with UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency in Budapest, Hungary, and I will be your host for the next 45 minutes. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We will start with a little bit of introduction about the OneUN, about this event series. So while we are doing that, I would like to invite you in the audience on the various channels you are watching us through to enter your names and where you are connecting from to the chat, so we can all see the geographical diversity and even say hello to each other. Also, as the session will continue, please feel free to leave any comments or questions you may have in the chat sections. My colleagues and I will monitor it, and then towards the end, we will allocate some time to answer some of your questions, so stay tuned for that. And please be active in the chats. All right, so while you are doing that, let me tell you a few words about what exactly is the OneUN. So the United Nations system of organization is formed around multiple entities with varying organizational, institutional, and functional structures. Along with UN's principal organs, the UN system includes 30 affiliated funds, programs, specialized agencies, and other organizations and bodies. Smooth and efficient coordination and collaboration between the UN and the UN system entities is essential to achieve global sustainable development goals. So what is the OneUN Diverse Talent series where we are at the moment? The OneUN Diverse Talents is a series of our most insightful and inspiring joint events unifying the United Nations system under the OneUN umbrella and bringing together more than 20 multilateral organizations for talent outreach. The United Nations is committed to creating a diverse and inclusive environment of mutual respect. The United Nations recruits and employs staff regardless of gender identity, sexual orientation, race, religious, cultural, and ethnic backgrounds or disabilities. We are looking for candidates who are passionate about making a difference in the world, and we'd love for you to join us. So the event's theme today is careers in humanitarian sectors, in the humanitarian sector. Working in this sector, we follow the 4 guiding principles of humanitarian work. These are humanity, neutrality, impartiality, and independence. We are providing life-saving assistance to people affected by conflicts, disaster, and poverty. Humanitarian help is vital in reducing the impact of crisis on communities, helping recovery, and improving preparedness for potential future emergencies. We hope that today's session will offer an exciting opportunity to learn more about the work of the United Nations Command System on Humanitarian Affairs from a panel of industry experts from around the globe, whom I will very shortly introduce to you, I promise. But for now, just a note for those of you who may benefit from closed captions. Our session is streamed also on the YouTube channels of UN Carriers and UNICEF Carriers, and my colleagues are sharing in the chat sections the links to these YouTube channels. And if you need, there you can click on the closed captions button and follow the session with captions. Also, you can find the recordings of all previous sessions in the OneUN Diverse Talent series. And after we finish here today, this session will also be available on demand on these YouTube channels. I would like to ask you if you can to stay until the end of the event for a handout with useful information for potential job applicants. And if you haven't done so yet, you can also register for applicant resources through the link and QR codes provided again by my colleagues in the chat and on the screen as well throughout the session. So a few words about current job opportunities. So just to clarify, here today, we will not be listing job openings and job opportunities because they are numerous, and the many UN organizations in the humanitarian sector have all of them listed on their respective career sites. So what we are hoping here today is to provide a unique opportunity through our speakers' words, career journeys, and experiences to get a real and candid look into what it really means to work as an international humanitarian professional on a daily basis and how they got to the point in their career where they are today. So now, enough of the introductions, and without much further ado, let me introduce our panelists and let's learn a little bit more about them. So first of all, we have Margarida Laurero. Hola, Margarida. Thank you so much for being with us today. So Margarida is a lawyer by trade with specialization in migration and asylum. In 2002, she opted out of the private sector and joined the humanitarian and development contexts in Africa, Asia Pacific, Latin America, the Caribbean, and the Middle East. With over 20 years of experience working in the humanitarian sector in international law, protection, resettlement, external relations, she is currently serving as Deputy Representative of UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency in Panama. Up next, we have Rebecca Bushby. Hello, Rebecca. Thanks again for being with us.
Hi, Dora. How are you?
Hello. So Rebecca is the United Nations Children's Fund's, or in short, UNICEF's focal point for climate change and also for water, sanitation, and hygiene, which is abbreviated as WASH. So for climate change and WASH programs in Iran and in the MENA regional office. Humanitarian at core, Rebecca has previously worked in projects with the World Bank in Indonesia, conducted research on hygiene in informal settlements in Lebanon, and supported global youth-led WASH innovations through Young Water Solutions. And last but not least, our third panelist of the day is Adnan Mohamed. Hello, Adnan.
Hello, colleagues. Nadia.
Thank you so much for being with us today. So Adnan is the head of administration in the Regional Office for Southern and Eastern Asia in Nairobi with UN OCHA, which is UN's Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. He has over 20 years of work experience with the United Nations in administration and finance, having supported various humanitarian programs and responses in Ethiopia, Sudan, South Sudan, Mozambique, Nigeria, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. So these were the introductions, and by no means were these exhaustive lists of the achievements of our guests today, but I will very soon give the floor to them with the first question to delve a little bit more in detail about their career path and current work. So let's jump right into the questions. My first question will be to all three of you. I would like all three of you to answer this. So if you could tell a bit about yourself, walk us through your career path prior, but also within the UN. What does your job title I have just shared with our audience mean, in the daily work? What does a deputy representative, a focal point for WASH, head of administration do? And if you could also describe how does your work fit within the larger UN system of agencies, funds, and programs? It was a mouthful of a question, and I will leave it in your expert hands. And let's start by Adnan.
Thank you, Dora, and the distinguished audience. So, my career journey started with the public sector. I used to work first with development projects in my country, Ethiopia. I'm an Ethiopian national. I have a degree in business administration. I joined the UN in 1999, June. I joined the UNHCR Eastern Refugee Program in Ethiopia, where I was admin finance associate. The work I started with UNHCR lasted like 6.5 years. Later, I joined UN OCHA, the office that I work with now. My area of responsibility has always been in operations, supporting colleagues to do their job through logistic, finance, HR, and like functions. So that was my journey. I am currently head of operation in regional office, Rosea, Eastern and Southern Africa. I manage 25 countries. That is in brief my work. How my work also fits into the bigger UN system. Normally, we have joint operations teams at the regional level as well as the country level, where we discuss the harmonization of the UN procedures and processes in order to basically gain more efficiency. So I'm a member of the OMT forum, which is at the regional level as well as the country level. So that's how my current responsibility fits with the wider system. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Adnan, for sharing this. I will pass now the mic to Margarida.
Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. It's such a pleasure also to be able to have this chat with you. Well, starting with myself, I'm Portuguese. I graduated in law, so I'm a lawyer, knowing I did not quite want it to be a lawyer, so it was a bit of a weird option, but I knew that it would take me somewhere. Still, I did a few years as a lawyer in Portugal, and then I started in the private sector, managing human resources. And as you know, a lot of people loved it. My colleagues were super enthusiastic. It did not quite fit me. So as Dora said, in 2002, I opted out the private sector and I volunteered abroad with a very small NGO called Justice and Peace Commission in a territory. It's Timor-Leste, now a beautiful country that restored its independence. And this unique experience helped me to understand what I wanted. And it was not quite a job, but I needed a call. I needed a mission where I could contribute more directly to positive growth, support, restoration in this specific setting of Timor-Leste, of community links, and learn with the resilience and the strength of those that I was serving. So I was investigating serious crimes. Again, it was very much linked to law, but I was also in contact with the UN peace building, and that opened my horizons. So from there, I joined several humanitarian and development contexts in all the continents, basically. I started as a JPO with the United Nations, with UNHCR, but then I left after 3 years. And I since then was back and forth between NGOs, the UN. I did development with UNDP as well. And I also worked with emergencies, supporting governments directly, so being hired by governments. Some 6 years, I rejoined UNHCR. I covered many continents as well, and many areas of intervention, let's say, and that's the beauty of the UN. And I'm currently the deputy representative of UNHCR in a multi-country office that is set in Panama. So we cover 9 very different countries from Central America and the Caribbean. Our mandate is, of course, protection. We protect asylum seekers, refugees, statelessness, mixed movements of refugees and migrants. It's a very, very rich continent and operation, let's say, in that sense. And although my role right now, it's very much a managerial role, managing different teams in different countries and different settings and different emergencies, the beauty of this specific office is that I can still wear my boots, I can still put my shoes on and go to the field and work directly with the people we protect and support the teams that are wonderful teams that we have across this region. And this is what I do now. My experience was diverse. Again, I didn't aligned myself to work with protection, international protection, and also humanitarian assistance, but I wouldn't do anything else at this point. Thank you.
Well, Margarita, definitely your enthusiasm and dedication shines through. And it's just so interesting to observe that there is no two similar career path or entry into working in the humanitarian system. Both Adnan and you have such rich and diverse careers, so it was very inspirational having listened to it. And you mentioned that you started with UNHCR as a JPO, and this is a common thread between you and Rebecca, who I would also like to ask to describe upon this question a little bit for us.
Thanks, Dora, and hi, everyone. Thank you for letting me come to this and speak today. I echo what Margarita said. It's very, very exciting to have that opportunity. So I'm Rebecca. I'm a Norwegian national, currently based in Iran, and I support both the Iran country office of UNICEF here and our regional office for the broader Monaro. My background is I first went into international development, so I studied international development studies and political geography, not quite knowing what I wanted to do with that or where I was planning on going. But during my studies, I was lucky enough to be able to take a few breaks. So I went to the World Food Programme in Copenhagen as an intern. And then I went to Kenya and worked with a small NGO who was working with Congolese refugees in urban settings. And during that experience, I realized that I was on the right track, but that I wanted a few more kind of tangible, specialized skills. So I then went on to do a master's degree in water, sanitation, and health engineering. So what we look at there is how to make sure that people have adequate quantities of water, but also the right qualities, access to sanitation facilities, so toilets, but also hygiene and showers. And the main goal is to limit the risk of health risks. So I really enjoyed that. I volunteered for a little bit after my master's, and then I started working with the Norwegian Red Cross, mainly in Africa, on epidemic preparedness. So I was based in Nairobi, but covering 5 countries, and we were looking at community engagement as a way to detect health risks, which was fascinating. It was a really, really nice project and great job. But at the same time, I also was made aware of the JPO program and made aware of this one position that was in Lebanon that was working on water and sanitation. And I'd worked in Lebanon previously, so I wanted to go back there and started my career with UNICEF in Lebanon in 2020. So right after the big explosion in Beirut. The pictures that you can see here is from some of the projects that we were running at the time, where we were trying to make sure that all institutions and households had access to clean water after the destruction of the big blast. I spent 2 years in Lebanon working on water and sanitation, but gradually got more into the climate change field. So now I work mainly on water and climate change, looking at ensuring that people have adequate quantities of water, as well as that children are protected from other impacts of climate change. After 2 years in Lebanon, I've moved now to Iran. So I do the same thing in Iran and also for the regional office, so covering more countries. A day in my work is very, very varied, which is part of what makes it very exciting. We work closely with governments, we work closely with partners, and we're also doing a lot of evidence creation and trying to really understand what the climate change risks are to children in the region and how we as UNICEF can respond to them. So overall, it's all very exciting and very diverse, and very happy to be here today. Thank you.
Thank you. We are very lucky to have you. And also just a note for our audience who is interested in the JPO Junior Professional Officer Program. Please inquire with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the country of your nationality to see if they have a JPO program with any of these UN organizations. And also there are some countries who are sponsoring candidates from developing countries. So you might want to look into that as well. Well, this was a very inspirational first round of questions. And to me, it's very, very interesting and important to point out how administration and finance is also a key component of humanitarian efforts. And for this reason, I would like to ask you, Adnan, to elaborate a little bit more on how you first started your career in the UN system.
Thank you, Dora. So my career with the UN started 1999 June, as I briefly mentioned earlier, with UNHCR. So I was a junior staff, G6, admin finance associate, and I have worked in an office where at that time Ethiopia was hosting one of the largest refugee caseload in eastern Ethiopia. So I had the opportunity to be part of an effort that has also resulted durable solutions for the refugees in repatriation through repatriation programs. Refugees were Somalis who fled from the war, and after years of spending in refugee camps, they were able to go back voluntarily, and also support from UNHCR. So I was dealing with that as head of admin and finance in that sub office, where I have to support the logistics and admin and finance side of the operation. I joined OCHA in January 2005, again as a head of administration, working in my country, Ethiopia, and again I had a job as a B2 in Afghanistan. So that was my first international assignment with OCHA. So I had also the opportunity to serve humanity in such a location where the security and the suffering of the people affected by the war was tremendous. So I was instrumental in setting up OCHA operations in Afghanistan. And I moved to Iraq to late 2010, and then I had to be posted in Sudan again as head of administration, particularly supporting the operations of OCHA in Darfur. After that, I had the opportunity also to serve the organization in Syria, which was one of the biggest humanitarian crises in the world. So I spent 2.5 years there. Finally, I got a job in Geneva, field support again. And then finally, I came back to the Eastern Africa Juba office. I was heading the operation of OCHA South Sudan for 3 years almost. And then now I am based in Nairobi as head of regional administration, supporting the operations of the regional office, particularly the area of search. Also, I'm part of the operations management team, which is regional. We work on common services and how the UN initiatives in relation to efficiency, common services, use of common contractors can be implemented. So that is my journey in the UN career in brief. Back to you.
Thank you very much for sharing that. It's very international, and that's also a common thread with our guest today. But if you are listening to this session and are interested in working in the humanitarian sector in your home country, There are plenty of local opportunities as well, also affiliate opportunities besides for the international professional openings. So again, all of these will be listed on the career pages of the respective UN organizations, and you can browse there. So now I would like to go back to Margarida with my next question. Margarida, you have such a versatile background, starting in the private sector, and then you mentioned how you felt a calling to join the humanitarian sector. So how would you say your background in the private sector and the humanitarian field is useful for the UN system as a whole, or the organization? How did it make your work now richer and more well-rounded?
Thank you. Well, I first of all, I think that my experience as a lawyer and all my those years at university, they matter for everybody out there that's thinking, oh my God, I still have to study this much, and you know, it does give you a thick skin, let's say, for eventual options, professional options in the future. But I believe that it was both professional experience, but also soft skills, personality. You know, the way I was used to communicate and to think outside of the box, which we very much do in the private sector. I believe it was of help. I brought a bit of different thinking from that sector, the private sector, but also from my NGO background. I worked with a few NGOs, as I said, some smaller, some bigger, and the way that NGOs promote critical thinking and problem solving skills, because we don't have much often, so we do need to think outside of the box. That conjunction, let's say, it's a bit of it gives you a bit of an innovation way of approaching change and managing stressful situations, but also to inspire others, to inspire other colleagues and other people that want to sometimes feel more stressed. We probably will talk about it, to go far and to move forward, and to think of the goal and what we are doing, wherever you are, if it's an NGO or hopefully you will join the UN and one of our agencies. Also empathy, talking about soft skills, empathy matters. Having the right attitude, and that I learned in court, because if you don't have the right attitude, at least in the system that I worked, it can take you far to talk with the judges. So I've then also had a various or a diverse experience professionally. So I was not just a lawyer or working with human resources. I put myself outside of my comfort zone many times, trying and to see what I wanted, what I liked to do. Because when you like to do something, you give more, and you tend to also perform better. So I worked many years with international protection. I did external relations, which I absolutely love. I did public and media information, and both external relations and public information. I did it inside and outside of the UN. I for many years I did interagency coordination, tough job, but you learn so much to see everybody else's agenda and how you can put everybody on the same page. So I believe that also helped with what I brought to UNHCR, and yes, and then the diversity, as other colleagues had said, Adan and Rebecca. I've worked in many different countries, and each country you learn something. It gives you a different perspective to the same issues, and it enriches you. So when you come to one specific agency or to one operation, you tend to bring that with you, and that's a plus. So that's what the background has served for, and this is also why we work a lot with young people. We like to have like new workers, new staff, new colleagues, because they bring that fresh attitude and perspective of things that sometimes we lose perspective having being always under an emergency setting. Over to you, Dora.
Thank you. I think we can all learn from what you just shared, that even if someone is just, dipping their toes in the water, coming from private sector to the UN system, thinking, I don't have any experience in the UN system, think of your transferable skills, both hard skills and soft skills, how you can sort of translate them into what the job requires. So a lot to learn here today. Now I would like to turn to Rebecca with my next question. Being focal point for climate change and WASH for such a large organization such as UNICEF, I'm sure your daily work has its moments, and it's specifically what I would like to ask you about, to share what is the most rewarding thing in your work, but also probably the most challenging for you.
Good question. I think I'll probably start with the challenge. I mean, being quite often we're far away from home, and we're in new and difficult contexts because that's where the need is the greatest. And there is a challenge associated with that. I mean, personally, being far away from home can be difficult. But also the challenges that you then face in your work are quite often complex, and they're people's lives. So it's hard. And I think that goes back to what Margarita was saying about, having the personality for this job. Sometimes that also means that it can be difficult because you are in difficult situations and you're seeing that people are having a difficult time. But the other side of that is that these two things are also what's most rewarding. I think that we're privileged to be able to travel and be in new contexts and experience these new places and learn from our colleagues in these new places who are from everywhere. And it's very rewarding to see that we can actually make a change. And I think that's what I really enjoy about UNICEF particularly, but also I see in other UN organizations, is that the UN has a role to play that's quite big. You can make changes at a bigger, more structural level, which I quite like, because then you can see that there will be long-term changes. And then I also think, just to mention that, another thing that's quite rewarding is that very rarely are you working only with your own agency. So very rarely am I working only with UNICEF. I'm quite often working with UNDP or UNHCR or UNEP and other agencies. And so there's a lot of learning across agencies, and there's a lot of opportunity to, during your career, as I think has been shown by Margarita and Adnan as well, is you can also move around internally within the UN. And that's also quite a rewarding point, because you can always continue to grow personally while learning and contributing to the different mandates of the different organizations. So I think I'll stop there, because I could go on for a while about the rewards and about the challenges, but I think that kind of highlights the basis of it. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. And you said something very important as well that underlines the concept of our session today, the OneUN webinar series, but also, in the bigger picture of the OneUN, that the UN organizations are not separate entities working in isolation from each other, but they are very much intertwined, supporting each other, which can manifest even in the physical level in hardship duty stations, where there is one UN compound and colleagues from various organizations are living and working, shoulder to shoulder, side by side. And being mindful of the time, there are so many good questions from our audience, but before we will turn to taking some questions from the audience, let's do again a round of one question, maybe just 1 minute, each of you, to share with us the best moment of your entire career in the UN system so far. So, Margarita, would you like to go first?
Okay. I I don't even see it as a career. I just love what I do. I love to work where I work right now, and so I'm gonna stick to UNHCR. But I had such beautiful moments and experiences throughout my experiences with different sectors. But I have to say, I really enjoyed, and as Rebecca was putting it, you can think outside of the box. You make your post, you make your job, and that's something that the UN allows you to do if you share that enthusiasm and results. So I was in Angola, and I started as a protection officer. And eventually, somehow, it was the emergency obliged me to be a bit flexible, and I started doing external relations and public information because the perception of refugee population at that time from the Democratic Republic of Congo, the perception was not so good. So I needed to skip my original job description, and I had the support of my management. There was no policy at that time or procedure in place at UNHCR overall to guide, on how to educate the media, because we started having a huge problem with the media. So what we did with the wonderful team that I was leading at the time as external relations, we started developing an initiative along with the government of Angola and along with the media that was often, quite aggressive, to see how the media is a protection tool. They are my messengers, so I need them to be on the same pace that I was. So that was an inspiring moment, because the that fear that sometimes the UN has, and it's not a fear, it's like that, it seems like there's a disconnection between the media and the UN. It faded, because when we approached the media, and then we approached the official communication ministry of the government, they were so happy that we had that initiative to do working sessions that turned into workshops, that turned into booklets with information. Everybody was using the right terminology. Everybody was understanding the situation of the refugee situation and emergency in the border with Angola, and that really helped with our main goal, which was to protect those thousands of very vulnerable people. So being open to following this thread, to change ideas, to go with the flow a little bit, was an opportunity in my career, let's say, with UNHCR, that I'm very thankful to this day. There's no question that these efforts had a positive result, and that the refugees were more protected because of this positive perception that was being created with the public audience. Over to you.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Margarita. Now, Adnan, over to you. What would you highlight as the best moment of your career?
Thank you. I think in the humanitarian sector of the UN, every day our work has a positive impact on the people we support. So being part of that effort is not only rewarding, but also inspirational. So the example I can share is one that I had in Mozambique, early 2019. We had a massive storm called Cyclone Ida that has devastated that particular country and beyond. So I was in charge of the logistic support to the staff who are responding to the emergency, which was composed from various mechanisms, search mechanisms, as well as the staff who get deployed from Nairobi, where I'm based. So I was in the center of that logistic support, and I was also having the opportunity, because I used to work in conflict contexts, but this was my first time to support an operation of that scale in a natural disaster type of emergency. So we were able to put search staff in a short notice in Beira as well as in Denver, where was the epicenter of the storm, and we were all hosted in an airport. So the working conditions were very difficult because there was no roof at all, there was no office. But I was with the support of my team, we were able to travel people in short notice. We were able to put them where they were supposed to be, just to do their assessments, rapid assessments, and report on the humanitarian situation every day. So that was my best moments in my career, enabling others to do their job, and that's what I do every day.
Thank you very much for sharing that, also reflecting on the realities of working in the field. No matter if you work in protection, you work in finance, you work in admin, working in the field is working in the field. Rebecca, over to you.
Thanks. I mean, I've had a much shorter UN career than my colleagues here. But in the 2 years that I've been with UNICEF, there are so many different things that I could mention. And I think that, as Adnan was saying, there are lots of examples of projects that go really well, where you see that you're actually reaching people, and you can go and visit the field and think, wow, this is great. It's actually making a difference. But I think to sort of echo Margarita's point a little bit, I mean, one of the best things in my very short UNICEF career was that we really started taking climate change seriously. And that the office that I was in at the time in Lebanon, where we started conversations about, okay, we need to be looking at climate change. And when I said, okay, well, I would quite like to take, a bit of a role in this and try to sort of push it forward across all the different sections, not only WASH, and management were positive to that and gave me the space to give it a try. I think that was one of the best moments, because it's also put me on this path that I'm now on, that I'm very much enjoying and that I really believe is very important. So I think it's that, probably.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We are getting closer to the end of the session today, but I still would like to devote some time to take maybe one or two questions from the audience. And thank you so much for all your comments and all your questions. Many of you are asking, how much are you expected to move countries whilst working in the UN? And also a great follow-up question, how manageable is personal and family life whilst doing so? Adnan, would you like to, because like you've been around a lot of countries and regions, would you answer this question in a nutshell?
Yeah, I think mainly what drives the move is the nature of the specific agency for which you work, because like the humanitarian agencies like OCHA, UNICEF, UNHCR, they slightly vary in their policies and have to deploy their staff based on the crisis they are responding to. So that will be the driver of how many countries or assignments you take when you sign the contract with the humanitarian entities. And the other one is basically the policy based, like I do. Remember, UNICEF, UNICEF, they have rotation policy where it is a requirement you serve certain number of years in certain location, and then you move on. So that's called rotation policy. I'm not an HR, but it depends on either the emergencies that drives our work as humanitarians or the policy of the organization. But if you join the humanitarian world, you should be prepared to move.
Exactly. Thank you so much for that. And again, pointing out, if someone wants to work locally, there is also room for that and opportunities for that. One more question from the audience, and that's to you, Margarita. Really, in a nutshell, our viewer is describing that they would love to serve in a conflict or post-conflict mission, but have no experience in the field beyond Brazil. Any tips for having success in the application?
Yes, definitely. We all started somewhere, and I didn't start going off to conflicts. That was something that came with time. So focus on what is relevant for the position that you are aiming at. What is it that in the the terms of reference, you can be of support, not just professional experience, but your competencies, your transferable skills, as Dora was putting it a bit earlier, your soft skills. What is it that you can bring that is relevant for that operation? And again, you don't have to have experience in conflict or post-conflict to go to a conflict or post-conflict. You have to have the technical expertise. For instance, imagine that you are a lawyer again, and we need legal people, or that you are a WASH person, you are an environmental engineer, you can support with WASH, for instance, or that you have great programmatic skills and you can work in admin and program. And then you can work all over the world, because those backstage, I know a lot of colleagues that started with the backstage key core functions that support the whole operation on the front row, and today they are in the front row. They are protection officers, they are field officers, but they started as human resources programs, so they started supporting and understanding the operation, so they know what is needed, they know the pillars. So don't feel constrained because you don't have that experience in conflict. It's not really the point. The point is, what can you give to that operation, to that team? So teamwork, quite important.
Thank you so much. And we would love to answer more of your very excellent questions, but also don't want to go too much over the allotted time limit. So as a closing circle, I would like to ask all three of our guests today that in 1 minute or less, but really because we are a little bit running out of time here, just to give a takeaway message to our viewers today, what would be your biggest takeaway or advice for anyone listening in who would like to join the UN system or who is applying to positions? So let's start with Adnan, please.
The advice I have for the potential candidates, especially the young professionals, is that UN is in search of diverse talent. So keep applying jobs. And the good thing about the UN universe is that you always find a position that fits your professional background. There are many entry points, including being a volunteer with the United Nations. But please don't be hesitant to apply jobs. This is an era of information technology. When I was first joining the UN, it used to be the time when you have to look on the world to see the postings, but now you have wider options to look for which agency is in need of the talent you have, and apply jobs and never give up.
That's right. Try multiple jobs and never give up is a great take-home message. Rebecca, what would be your advice to potential applicants?
In addition to Adnan's comment, I think that one of the things that I did quite early on, which I would encourage others to do, is I was quite annoying and active in reaching out to people who were in the field that I was interested in to learn more about it. And I mean, messaging people on LinkedIn, meeting people when I was in Oslo, in Nairobi, trying to kind of learn what does it mean to work. And at the time, I was wondering about what does it mean to work in WASH. And a lot of these same people I now work with and I see and I engage with. But I think that it teaches you a lot along the way of what does that field mean and what do you need to be in that field. And it's generally quite a good learning opportunity. So I think I would encourage that. Thanks.
Thank you for that. And last but not least, Margarida, what's your advice for our viewers?
Well, aside from networking, which is essential, as Rebecca was saying, understand that this will not be your average job. I always say it's a calling, it's a lifetime commitment. So you're dealing with people directly. So when you think about that, do not beat up yourself about deciding to do something else, but have that in mind. And do not be afraid to take risks. Do not be afraid to venture outside of your comfort zone. That shows your, again, the right attitude, applying. Here we all applied 1,000 times. It's not that people don't recognize your experience. It is like that. So apply, network, but also be conscious, what is it that you want? Because that will be asked of you. Don't go general. Focus on an area that you want, and in that area several agencies can cover. So focus on that area and develop it.
Thank you very much for all this valuable advice and words. And unfortunately, our session is drawing close to its end. It would be so nice to listen to more to you, because what you shared was uplifting, inspirational, and I'm sure very educational as well. We can take home a lot of very useful and practical messages beyond being inspired by the examples, all three of you. So I would like to thank all three of you, Marguerite, Darbak, and Adnan, for sharing your experiences and your advice. And again, thank you to all the colleagues in the OneUN team who made this session possible today. I would like to remind all of our listeners and viewers, if you haven't done so, you can still register for applicant resources at the QR code or link that is continuously being provided in the chat sections by my colleagues. So it's nothing left to do for us but to say our goodbyes, but only until the next OneUN career session, where we really hope to see you again. Thank you so much for being here with us, for listening, for your attention and interest. And so goodbye, see you soon, and have a very good day. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.